60 Minutes Rewind.
It's summer in Australia and it's been a season from hell. Raging fires have devastated the continent, scorching a reported 27 million acres and killing 33 people. Bushfires are a part of life in Australia and they're often deadly. But the scale of these fires is unprecedented. Areas across multiple states have ignited. Australian cities have suffocated in smoke, on some days giving residents the worst air quality in the world. And according to one estimate, 1 billion animals have been killed. Scientists say climate change is transforming Australia's environment, making it hotter and drier and exposing it to longer, more intense fire seasons. The fires started unusually early in September, and when we visited the continent this month, we found that Australia is still burning. The fires have devoured forests like rivers of lava. Smoke blanketing the landscape, the skies turning marmalade in the middle of the day. It's been a black summer down under, and it's not over yet. It sometimes feels as if Australia is at war, doing battle with insatiable flames that are fuelled by record heat, high winds, and a country parched by drought. And this is what's been left behind in towns like Cobargo, 5 hours south of Sydney, where Marilyn Mills was trapped inside her burning house.
So the fire came up through here, is that right?
It started coming up here, just straight, and I thought, I'm just going to burn to death.
It sounds as if you were convinced that you were going to die.
And I just thought, just die.
You wanted to die at that point?
If I could have killed myself, I would have done it in a second, rather than burn to death. It was so hot. Oh my God!
60 miles away on the coast, the scenes on New Year's Eve were like a modern-day Dunkirk. The fires forced people to retreat to the beaches as flying embers gusted across the sand.
They actually had to jump into the ocean to escape. The fires burnt right to the edge.
Have you ever seen that before? People having to shelter on the beach and in the water?
On a massive scale, over hundreds of miles in multiple communities, no, that's just unprecedented.
Greg Mullins was there, an experienced fire captain battling towering flames.
The wind was howling. When the fire came through, it sounded like a 747 jet landing. So the sounds, the sights, it was apocalyptic. I don't like this. Nah, out.
Mullins says he'd never seen a blaze move that quickly.
At one stage I saw kangaroos come out of the bush on fire and then just drop dead on the roadway, and I've never ever seen that before because they're fast animals, they know where to go.
This time-lapse video from a dashcam shows how firefighters were forced to scramble in the face of rapidly approaching flames. In less than 2 minutes, the fire consumed anything that didn't make it out. Hundreds of bushfires have burned for weeks on end, some of them merging into mega fires. And firefighters on the front line say nature has gone awry.
I saw fire behaviour that I didn't expect, and what I learned later was that the fire had created its own weather system.
What do you mean the fire had created its own weather system?
Big fires can form storm clouds, which then you have an inrush of air at the bottom, you have downbursts, just like a normal thunderstorm. You have lightning that can start fires 20, 25 miles away, and firefighters can lose their lives. So one night, an 8-tonne fire truck was picked up by a downburst and put on its roof and killed a firefighter and injured the rest of them.
To drop fire retardant, Australia is relying on borrowed flying tankers from North America. One of the planes went down in smoky conditions last month, killing 3 American firefighters on board.
We're so indebted to those people, and every firefighter felt it. 3 of our brothers, albeit from the US, lost their lives trying to help us.
Australia's firefighters are nearly all volunteers, courageous but exhausted. They're affectionately known as fireys, and we saw them protecting suburban homes. This fire is burning out of control, and it's just 25 miles from Canberra, Australia's capital city. And what makes things even more dangerous are the conditions. It's windy today, it's bone dry, and it's nearly 110 degrees. And it's the changing climate that's at the heart of the problem, according to scientists.
2019 was the hottest and the driest year in Australia's history. So we actually saw temperature records be broken all over the country.
Joelle Gerges is a climate scientist at the Australian National University and is a lead author of an upcoming United Nations report on climate change.
This is the type of summer you might not have expected till the middle of the century based on past projections. So I think this is really redefining what it means to actually be living through a period of rapid climate change.
So you're saying you would have expected this kind of scenario that we saw this summer to happen in 2050?
Yeah, potentially middle of the century.
Are you shocked?
Of course I'm shocked.
Gerges says Australia is more vulnerable to climate change than any other developed nation, in part because it's the driest inhabited continent.
When it comes to climate change, is Australia a bellwether for the rest of the world?
I think this summer has been a real wake-up call for most Australians. And myself as a climate scientist, seeing the extreme level of heat and the bushfires and the drought conditions playing out so catastrophically has been, I think, a wake-up call to the world.
We have been mugged by the reality of climate change in this summer.
Malcolm Turnbull is a political conservative who served as Australia's Prime Minister up until August of 2018.
This is climate change in the raw. This is what we have been told to expect for years.
When you were Prime Minister, were you warned that the fires were getting worse?
Well, of course, everyone has known this. We've been warned by the climate scientists. Everyone has been aware of this, except for those who, well, the climate change deniers are aware of it, but they choose to deny reality. It has been a challenging time.
Turnbull was bounced out of office by the right wing of his own party, largely over his support for cutting carbon emissions.
The right-wing climate deniers treat an issue of science and physics and fact as though it was a question of ideology, and their conduct is not just idiotic, it is downright dangerous. Dangerous for us here in Australia and right around the world.
You're talking about people in your own party.
Of course I am, yeah, absolutely.
Dangerous and idiotic.
Well, of course it is dangerous and idiotic not to be taking the strongest action to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions.
Turnbull was replaced by Scott Morrison, who has minimised climate change. He famously stood up in Parliament in 2017 and taunted his opponents with a lump of coal.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. It's coal.
Morrison has prioritised protecting Australia's mining industry. Coal is the country's second largest export. And members of the current government argue it's not Australia's responsibility to act on climate change, since the country only produces about 1% of global emissions.
Isn't there some truth in that? I mean, if the US doesn't act, if China and India don't act to cut emissions, it doesn't matter very much what Australia does.
Well, if we don't act, a wealthy, advanced economy facing the harsh reality of climate change, if we don't act and show leadership, why would anyone else act?
With his country on fire, the current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, took his family on a Hawaiian vacation. When he returned home, he was given a cold shoulder as he tried to comfort victims in the fire zones.
He had 4 trucks to defend our town.
He was heckled by seething residents.
Nah, you're an idiot, mate. You really are.
Including in the hard-hit town of Cobargo, where Marilyn Mills lives.
A lot of people in Cobargo are angry with the Prime Minister. Do you share those feelings?
Well, he didn't like the fire. What can he do? He's just a bloke with a whole bunch of people under him and they're all idiots.
So for you, it sounds like it's the entire government that you're angry with.
Well, they need to have a look at what threatens Australia. Fire threatens Australia. That's our big thing, fire. fire, drought, all those sorts of things. That's what they need to focus on.
The story will continue after this.
There's been a big call
Greg
out
Mullen
on
says
generally
he
on the
and
south coast,
22
so
former fire and emergency service chiefs from all over Australia wrote to Prime Minister Morrison last April, warning him of a looming catastrophe and requesting more resources to fight bushfires.
And what was the response?
that he was too busy to meet with us.
He refused to meet with you.
Point blank, told us to buzz off, basically.
Why?
We've been told by senior public servants in Canberra that because we uttered two horrible words, climate change, we were discounted as being activists and we would not get a meeting at any stage with the Prime Minister.
We wanted to interview the Prime Minister about the devastating fires and their connection with climate change, but he declined our requests, as did other members of his government. Scott Morrison has admitted that he made mistakes in the handling of this crisis, but what he has not done is make any change to reduce this country's carbon emissions. Climate scientist Joelle Gergis says the future of Australia hangs in the balance.
Are the Australian people being betrayed by their politicians?
At this moment, I think it is really reckless and potentially criminal because we actually know enough about the science now. I think the science is crystal clear and I think the impacts are now playing out. Now, remember that Australia is actually an extraordinary continent. We have the highest level of plants and animals that are found here and nowhere else on Earth.
Australia's most iconic animals, koalas and kangaroos, have fared terribly, innocent victims of the fires. One scientist estimates at least 1 billion animals have died. We went to Kangaroo Island off Australia's southern coast, where tens of thousands of koalas are believed to have been killed. 48% of the island has burned. Surviving koalas have been brought to a makeshift care centre, the living room of a family that runs a wildlife park. The baby koalas, some only months old, receive special attention. Many koalas were singed on their paws and arrived dehydrated. A MASH unit has been set up to sedate them and treat their wounds so they may one day return to their habitat, or what's left of it. Feeding grounds have been reduced to char, and just before we left the island, we came across this hungry kangaroo, scouring the ashes for something to eat. In the last 2 weeks, it's finally rained, giving everyone some respite and hope that this most brutal season of fires may be coming to an end. But the scars remain. In what used to be pristine wilderness, ringing with birdsong and brimming with wildlife, there is silence. The music of the forest, in the middle of the Australian summer, is gone.